2. Yes, it's on. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, yeah! Can I have another cheer? Welcome back to the world of tech and to Fusion. I'm very excited. Naturally, because this is the first time that I've been at a tech event. So yeah, it's been absolutely buzzing to see everyone and to have some drinks with everyone, have a sort of a catch up. So I would like to thank, firstly, quickly, Mike Elsmore at the back, who has been handling all of the virtual fusions that we've been doing. If anyone has, did anyone watch any of those? Yeah, a couple, cool. Thanks, Mike. Conveniently, I had a son with my wife, and so I had like a sort of a sabbatical, and then handed over the reins to Mike. He did all the virtual stuff, and now I'm kind of like in a good position. So now I can go on stage again, and Mike can go back there and man the stuff behind the scenes. He can replace me. That is true. So I probably should do a good job tonight. So talking of that. So yes, I have become a dad, so I kind of like stepped back away from the tech scene. So I'm a little bit sort of out of touch with what's going on. So I don't really know. So with COVID and everything, so I've been keeping sort of tabs of what's happening in the tech world, mostly by recruiter LinkedIn messages, and I'm just like, oh, okay, right, what's going on there? And I don't really make sense of it. I should ask some of you at the bar afterwards. But I have got some top tips, right? If are there any Ruby developers in the house? There's one Ruby developer in the house. There's one Ruby developer in the house, and I'm about to make a joke, and it's my new boss. So, but if there are any Ruby developers, I'll tell you what, Paul. I don't know why, but I've got a really hot tip for you. Basecamp, for some reason, are looking for Ruby developers. Don't know why, but top tip, go for that. And also another one dropped into my inbox, which was open source developers for Twitch. I don't really know what that's all about. There you go. And if anyone wants to have a go at writing tech industry jokes, it's really hard. So please don't judge me too much. I've got one more joke down here. I can't read it. Oh, it just says Facebook. Right. Just some housekeeping stuff to get started, because you didn't come here to hear me tell really bad jokes. You actually came to hear professionals. First of all, big shout out for Habaneros for amazing burritos. The last time I did it, I love their burritos. They have even despite the pandemic and everything, they have opened up an actual on-site premises in the Great Western Arcade. I'd recommend you actually go check it out. It's really cool. I love the stuff they do. So thank you, Habaneros. Our sponsors, our premium headline sponsors, Goldman Sachs. We'll hear a bit more from Goldman Sachs directly from Mark, but a really big shout out to them. We've been really massively supported for Fusion at a time that has had a lot of uncertainty. It's been quite difficult. So and they've been absolutely great. And also obviously a massive thanks to Goldman Sachs for choosing naturally the best city to come to relocate loads of engineering. Yeah. We started sort of partnering with people we started as a partnership scheme properly about, well, it was really documenting the people that we were working with a lot and trying to support as much as possible. So for anyone that doesn't recognise any of these people, we've got Hack the Midlands, and I'll talk to you about Hack the Midlands in a second. We've got Cryogenics, sadly Stuart Longridge isn't here tonight, but he's been massively supportive for us since the start. Code Your Future, who did a demo day fairly recently. This is going to be quite a few months ago, but they've been getting quite a lot of node devs into work, and the work they do with getting refugees into coding is absolutely amazing. School of Code, of course, and we've obviously got Anne-Marie from School of Code tonight, speaks on School of Code, and we've got a couple of ex-boot campers. I can see stickers for swag. Who doesn't like swag? Goldman's obviously, and also Mind. I've been partnering with Mind for mental health, which is becoming, luckily, gladly more prevalent within us to talk about mental health, especially within the tech workspace, where obviously lots of us need to talk about burnout and mental health and things like that more. And new on the list, Brum Giles, Luke Brown and Brum Brum.js have been massively supportive. Really, it was kind of an experiment when we were sort of watching Brum.js restart to see if there's any take-up and how people felt, and we got sort of feedback of looking at the event, and they've been really, really supportive of us. So in terms of Birmingham's kind of regular meetup, Brum.js is the one to go to. We have a code of conduct. Codes of conduct are really, really important. That's the address. That's a general conference code of conduct one, which I think is adapted from PyCon possibly. But code of conduct are very important. I'm not going to recite all of it, but it is, let's just all be nice to each other. I'm just having an argument with the, maybe the podium's not being nice to me. Let's all be nice to each other. Yeah, if let's not judge people on race, gender, sexuality, etc., etc. But importantly, if you do feel that there is a violation of the code of conduct tonight, then come and speak to any of the organisers. That's me, Hannah, Andy, Mike at the back, and Indy, who's around somewhere there. And then we'll take the appropriate action. Tech events coming up, so I did mention I did mention Hack the Midlands. Hack the Midlands is at Millennium Point, and it's from the. Oh no, it's not. It's a virtual one, isn't it? Yes, thought so. Sorry, I was assuming I'm on automatic pilot. There's a virtual one, Hack the Midlands 6, from the 28th to the 31st. That's really, I would say, probably the biggest tech event that happens in the region per year. It's absolutely massive. It's even got safeguarding so that under 17s can take part, things like that. That's when it's in person, but obviously online it's still sort of massive, and the work that Tom Goodman and the team have done is absolutely amazing. And they've been very, very supportive of Fusion as well. And the aforementioned Brum.js is on the 28th of October, so I would highly recommend going to that. The venue is like Somerset House now, I think? Yes? Okay, I actually do remember. Thank you. This slide is actually from the same deck for the last time I actually did it in person. It's not gone; it's still around. So there's, if you can see the organisers, we're wearing masks. Just be mindful of people's space, hand washing, etc., things like that. And lastly, the important thing: not hearing me rabbit on. So on to our first speaker of the evening. So I saw a tweet by developer relations and developer and DevOps spokesperson and well-known personality Kelsey Hightower, and he started talking about .NET 6, and I had a little bit of it. And we had a discussion with the team about sort of things that were happening with it, like the WSL and possibly coming out of the Microsoft space where you can start deploying it to other things. So there's a lot of cool stuff. So we obviously needed to get an expert to speak about it. So the good news is naturally this is Fusion, so we found one. So he's a cloud consultant and represents Bill Gates' COVID-19 mind control department. Here to speak on .NET 6, please welcome to the stage Liam Moat.
So you wanted an expert in .NET 6. Unfortunately, my colleague wasn't available, so you got me instead. Just to help set the scene, show of hands if you're a developer. Keep your hand up if you're a .NET developer. Not bad, okay. Better than I thought I was going to get. So let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Liam. I'm an engineer at Microsoft. I work in our digital and app innovation team. What that basically means is that I help customers build applications and deploy them out into Azure. Whether that is working with Visual Studio, whether that's working with .NET, or whether that's looking at things like Azure DevOps or GitHub. Today, I want to talk to you about .NET 6, and more importantly, what's coming new in .NET 6. So last year, I did a talk about 5 cool new things in .NET 5. I thought it would be appropriate to do 6 new things coming in .NET 6. And we're going to talk about everything from the latest in C# 10 all the way through to minimal web APIs in ASP.NET, all the way through to some of the good stuff that we're doing in Visual Studio to help improve developer productivity. So we've only got 20 minutes today, so we better get stuck in. First of all, let's talk about C#. From now on, Microsoft plans to release a new version of C# with every release of .NET. So we're expecting to see new features, new functionality, new improvements on a yearly basis. C# 10, our strong focus has been on simplification. Features like global namespaces, global using statements, and file-scoped namespaces. The idea is to reduce as much boilerplate code as possible to help you getting to be productive as quick as possible. In C# 10, for the .NET developers in the room, we are now able to declare records as structs. We can declare properties as required, and more that we'll have a look at now. So hopefully, we can switch over to a demo. So we're going to spend a little bit of time looking at some code that we've got here. Not too much, we're going to dive through this pretty quickly. And first of all, we're seeing a C# top-level application. No global, no namespaces, no class declarations, straight in with our main method that we want to execute. The first thing that we've introduced in C# 10 is the concept of global usings. So if you've written .NET before, you'll be very used to having 10, 20, maybe even 30 using statements at the top of every single C# file. Now in C# 10, we have the ability to declare a using statement as global, which, as the name suggests, means that it affects the entire project. So here we are in our global using CS, and we can prefix all of our using statements here with global, which means that these namespaces are now available for the entire C# project. That means that we can jump over into our individual class files here and remove all those using statements. Again, getting to the important code as quickly as possible. Now jump over to my person record here. We introduced records in C# 9, and we now have the ability to create a record as a struct, which is a nice improvement, reducing our value heap, reducing the amount of memory allocation that we have on the heap. A couple of other nice features that we have here. We can go ahead and declare all of these as required, if I can spell. Oh, I definitely can't. There we go. There we go. Wait. There we go. And I will say this feature is so new that Visual Studio still doesn't know that it works, which is why we've got that red squiggly there. We also have the ability to create inline landers in order to affect our value assignments. So from here we can say this field is going to be equal to value, and let's say we want to trim all the white space out of that. So we can cut all of that out without having to go into the pain of having to create our own backing fields and such. And finally, a nice new one for all of the C# developers out there that hate writing if value equals null, throw null exception. Now we can just put a double exclamation on every parameter, and C# is going to compile that down for us. So some new features coming in C# 10, all with the intention of cutting down that boilerplate and allowing us to get to the important code as quickly as possible. Next up, we've got minimal web APIs for cloud native applications. The idea here is to build on top of the work in C# 9, where we introduce top-level applications, to help you build minimal web APIs with as little code as possible. Any Node.js developers in the room? Plenty. Lots of people writing express applications, looking at ASP.NET thinking, what's all the noise about? Why are we declaring namespaces? Why are we writing classes all the time? Minimal Web APIs aims to address this and make it simple to create web APIs using .NET. We're going to quickly jump back into another demo with this. And we're going to jump over into our minimal APIs project here. We'll go ahead and set that as our startup project. Have a look at our program CS. So first of all, you'll notice that there's no startup.cs file, that C# file that all developers see on creation and then ignore for as long as possible until something goes wrong. We've now consolidated that down with the program.cs file. And you'll also notice no using statements, no namespaces, no class declarations, yet exactly the same behavior. First of all, global using statements come along with the ASP.NET NuGet packages, so we don't have to worry about declaring using Microsoft.asp.NET. We don't have to create our namespaces because of the features of top-level programs, and we also don't have our class definitions. We can see here that we've got a couple of routes defined. We've got a couple of get methods there and a post method. And we can see some of the functionality of the new C# Lambda functionality coming in here with the ability to pass in typed parameters as Lambda expressions. We could go ahead and introduce another one here. Typing is not my strong point today. Let's go and get another get here. And we could put new, let's say get person. Definitely not, here we go. And from here we could go ahead and return straight out without having to worry about action methods or without having to worry about serialization, and we can go ahead and return a new person with a name of Liam. And we can go ahead and we can run this with about half the amount of code as what we're used to seeing in C#. There we go. Everybody's favorite, semicolon at the end. There we go. And we've got exactly the same as what we would have in a traditional ASP.NET Web API without having to worry about controllers, without having to worry about action methods, without having to worry about all of these action results and serializing of the data that we have been doing up until this point. Conscious of time, we will carry on going through our list. My inability to type has set us back a little bit. Next up, everybody's heard Microsoft talking about the multi-platform app UI or .NET MAUI. Microsoft are great at naming things, we all know. .NET MAUI being the evolution of Xamarin Forms, aimed to help you deliver cross-platform native desktop and mobile applications all from a single code base. Under the hood, .NET MAUI is using the same technologies that we see out in the market today. We've got Mac Catalyst for macOS applications, WinUI for Windows applications, and of course native iOS and Android apps. .NET MAUI abstracts all of those frameworks, all of those technologies into a single framework built on top of .NET 6. All of this means that you can build applications for any device from a single set of code and a single project system. Number 4, Blazor desktop web applications. Blazor has very quickly become a very popular development framework within the .NET ecosystem. In fact, it's one of the fastest growing workloads that we have in .NET. We first launched Blazor with support for Blazor Server. We then evolved that using WebAssembly into Blazor WebAssembly, and we're now taking that one step further and letting you build native applications or hybrid applications in conjunction with WebUI and .NET MAUI. What this means is that as developers, you get best of both worlds. You get native applications from .NET MAUI, and you can bring along all of your web components that you've built using Blazor. Blazor applications are built on top of .NET MAUI and have full access to the native machine. This means that you can do things like call native APIs, access the file system, and write multi-threaded applications. Although it will run anywhere that MAUI does, that includes Android, iOS, and desktop, in .NET 6, our primary focus is on the desktop application in desktop use cases using .NET MAUI. Number 5, hands up if you've used Entity Framework or you're currently using Entity Framework. Same hands from .NET developers. In .NET 6, huge performance increases, up to 70% increase on queries per second or requests per second. A lot of this improvement comes from fundamental changes within .NET 6, but actually some re-architecting of Entity Framework Core itself. So we're expecting to see memory allocations down by over 40% and query times increasing by over 30%. And finally, the developer in a loop. At Microsoft, in conjunction with .NET 6 and the latest functionality in Visual Studio, we're helping developers build and debug applications quicker. At Microsoft, we refer to this as optimizing the developers in a loop, and it's all about making you productive. It includes build time improvements in both the CLI and in Visual Studio. You can see some examples here of the performance increases that we have from a clean build, fully compiling different nature or different types of applications. And also something we're going to look at in a minute, introducing hot reload across all project types in .NET. Hot reload means that we can make changes to both UI and backing code without having to recompile and rebuild our applications. We can ship a change, edit and continue all seamlessly in the debug experience. So let me jump over to one of another demo that we've got here. We're going to use a Blazor application for this. And I'm going to go ahead and run and debug this Blazor application. Here we go, everybody's favorite. We'll use a Hello World application. And I'm going to switch over to a counter. Very simple application. Every time I push a button, we're going to increment a number by 1. But I want to make a couple of changes to this, and I'm going to bring these up side by side so that we can see hot reload in action. As web developers and as ASP.NET developers, we're very used to changing HTML, changing CSS, and seeing those changes reflect in real time. Let me give you an example. We can jump into our counter razor, and we could go in here and say current count is, and we could put an exclamation point at the end here. And we can go ahead and hot reload that and see that change reflect on the other side. This is pretty common. We're used to seeing this in modern web development. What we're not used to seeing is compiled code refreshing in real time in the same kind of way. So in the same razor file here, I've got some inline C#. This is what's incrementing our counter here. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to change this and just say current count plus 10 instead. Again, we'll go and hot reload the application, see that refresh, and on the right-hand side, we're now incrementing by 10. Now, it's important to note that this is compiled code. This is not just-in-time compilation. This is happening at compilation time. And we can go one step further, and we can enable hot reload on file save to further streamline that down. Go ahead and save the change, and we're now incrementing by 15. Now this works for all .NET project types, whether you're building Blazor applications using WebAssembly, Blazor applications in the server, whether you're building .NET MAUI applications, WPF, and more. What's more, this is backwards compatible in Visual Studio and in the preview functionality of Visual Studio 2022, which I am using here. So we will come out of there, and we'll kill that one as well, and launch back up. And I'm very conscious that we've got to number 6. I'm hoping there's lots of questions because we are coming to a close. The last thing for me to note is that .NET 6 is currently in preview and will be launched generally available in November at the .NET Conf 2021. That's going to be from November the 9th through to the 11th. What's also worth noting that if you're building .NET applications today and you're building .NET 5 apps, you want to start thinking about your migration path to .NET 6, with .NET 6 being the latest long-term supported version of .NET. So with that, I'm going to stop and see if there are any questions.
Mike? There we we go. Have we got any questions? Hands up. We've got a couple over here.
Hey, thanks for the talk. So it was really good to see the hot module reload in .NET. So I have a question around, like you were mentioning at the end that people should migrate to .NET 6. So what would that? How can you like describe that in in a few sentences? Is it difficult, or like what's the situation about the migration?
Yeah, great question. So the migration journey from 5 to 6 is super straightforward. We're essentially going to change the runtime and tell Visual Studio that we want to use .NET 6 instead. They're backwards compatible, no breaking changes. You should be able to switch from 5 to 6, no problem at all. Everything you can do in 5, you can do in 6. So you can move over to 6 without too much pain. If you want to start transitioning over to things like minimal web APIs, for example, you can do that post-migration.
Cool. Any others?
I think there's one behind you.
It's looking like a lost sheep there. There we go.
The minimal web API thing, is that less expensive on the back end, or is it just sort of a developer shortcut to not writing so much code?
It is more of a developer shortcut. Okay. We're essentially doing the same thing in the background. We are optimizing some of the routes. So in previous versions of ASP.NET, you could do something similar. You could do a app.map get, and you could pass that through to an action result. We're essentially doing that on your behalf, and you're avoiding having to write controllers. But behind the scenes performance is about the same.
No, fair enough. It's still cool. It's just curious.
Yep.
Cool. Any more? One more.
Hi, it's just a follow-on from that. Is that more to attract people who aren't already in C# in that .NET space, or is it to just make the lives of people who already know that easier?
Yeah, great question. I think that there's two primary motives behind minimal web APIs. One is about making ASP.NET development more accessible, removing some of the ceremony, removing some of the boilerplate, so that new developers can come to .NET and hit the ground running and immediately see results, rather than having to understand what a namespace is, what a class is. They can immediately just start writing code. The second reason is we're seeing a shift in the industry towards smaller, discrete web applications. So the buzzword around this is microservices. It might not necessarily be microservices, but there's definitely a move towards smaller workloads. And what we're seeing is that developers are having to write a lot of boilerplate code to achieve something very simple. And sometimes where you just want an API to return 2, 3 action results, writing namespaces and classes and type definitions is just too much complexity in order to do something quite simple.
Cool, thank you very much. Can I give a round of applause from everyone for Liam Moat? So I can take that off now. Now, for anyone that's native to the West Midlands, you've probably been living under a rock, I expect, if you've not heard of School of Code and the work that Chris Meyer has done. It has been phenomenal. If you look at what he's doing now, the actual School of Code is now rolling out nationwide, which is quite astonishing. Its curriculum has evolved from full stack JavaScript, including .NET. Was it .NET or C#? I can't remember. I think it was C#, wasn't it? It's just the output and the amount of new developers being created by School of Code has just been a phenomenal success and a national success for Birmingham. So all of these things do not happen without management. So we're very, very lucky tonight to have the community manager that makes these things possible. So could everyone please give a warm Fusion welcome to Anna Marie Moss.
I was going to say, I'm not sure that I make everything happen, to be fair, but I'll take that. I'll take that. Right, let's see if we can get this booted up. So if
Now it's going to play
just got to make sure I don't knock the water all over everything, or that could be a very short presentation. Okay, let's get this working. Okay, now let's see if I can get that to go onto your screen. Awesome. Okay, we're in business, I think. Let's just move that over. Okay. Right, that's not me, by the way, although without a bit of makeup, you could get confused. So, hello everybody, my name is Anna Marie, and I'm the community, I've got to come closer, sorry. I could have done with a Madonna mic, couldn't I? Okay. Can everyone hear me now? Is that okay? Wicked. So, hello everyone, my name is Anna Marie, and I'm the community manager at the School of Code. For those of you who don't know us, which is probably more the people online, maybe, we run a free coding bootcamp that takes people from all walks of life, and we put them on a transformational journey from zero experience all the way to a job-ready developer. And then we help them to launch their careers in tech. And I think we've got a few of our alumni in the house. So thanks for the moral support. It's good to see you guys here. So today I'm going to tell you about our story so far, share some exciting news, which I think Jim has just spoiled, but we'll get to that later. And then, it's okay. And then I'm going to let you know how you can help us make an even bigger impact by joining us to be one of our School of Code mentors. Okay, so how did it all begin? Our founder, Chris, who's the guy up there, started the School of Code to help us get more different types of people coming into the tech space and learning to code. Technology is the future, but as it stands, only certain types of people are shaping that future and feeling the benefits of the jobs, the money, and the opportunities in technology. Our mission is to make learning to code fun, social, and accessible to all, but also to help these people to get into well-paid jobs, boost the local economy so that nobody gets left behind. So you ask, why is this so important? Software is eating the world, and anything that can be made with software soon will be, okay? We have a cliff edge of automation, a changing job landscape, and this is going to affect more and more people. At School of Code, we believe that we have a moral obligation that we should be helping to make sure that people don't fall through the cracks of the tech skills gap, but actually we should be retraining them and launching them into the careers of the future. So some boot camps can cost anything between £5,000 to £15,000, and there's an extensive list of prerequisites before you can enroll. And then afterwards, a lot of students really struggle to find a job. I mean, I bet you probably know some people who have seen online when people have gone through these boot camps and they're like, oh, do you know what? I've applied for so many jobs, but I'm just not getting anywhere. And the same can be said of individuals who enroll on a university degree. There's also a lack of diversity in tech. But when I talk about diversity, I'm not just talking about race, for example. It's all types of diversity. So it's age, race, gender, sexuality, disability, etc. In many companies, you may have teams that are really capable and intelligent people. But if they all come from similar backgrounds, their way of thinking tends to be more aligned. So as a effective software development team, though, this is the complete opposite of what you want. You know, what we want to do is be able to solve complex problems and design solutions that are going to be used by a wide array of people. And as such, you want to be able to explore this problem with lots of different perspectives so that you make sure that you are always finding the best solution. By bringing together different types of people, you increase your team's cognitive diversity and in turn generate lots of different ideas and solutions that you may not have ever come up with any other way. And that's just due, sorry, she put me off then, she's having a little bit of a giggle. Okay. And this is due to the melting pot of different people's life experiences that you bring together. So a lack of diversity can actually create blind spots for your business and put you at a disadvantage. Now, looking around, there's quite a few ladies here, so it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. But as a female, woman of colour, who is 45 years old, don't tell anybody, okay, and also took time out to have my children, okay, believe me, a failure to cast your net wider results in us missing out on people that have got a Swiss Army knife of lots of transferable skills, okay? So even the people you don't think are obvious to recruit when you see their CV come in, you could be missing out on some really great people if you're not looking at diversity when you're employing. And what we should do is make sure from a society point of view that our workforce is also reflecting the ethnic demographics of our communities. Gosh, you can tell my throat's getting dry. Okay. So seeing the problems in industry, Chris started the School of Code to tackle these issues head on. With the rise of automation, it's important that everybody has access to the skills of the future as more and more roles change and begin to disappear. As such, we wanted to break down, oh, you're a superstar, thank you. Okay. As such, we wanted to break down the barriers to entry, and one of the biggest obstacles was the high fees. So from the very beginning, School of Code established a free bootcamp model. We started this way because it's the right thing to do. Money shouldn't be a barrier for people to try and better themselves by accessing the skills and jobs of the future. We believe that as a bootcamp, so I hope they're listening out here, okay, if you know that you can get people to a level where they can add value to companies and where they are ready to be hired as professional software developers, then you don't need to charge your boot campers, because if you can get people up to those standards, companies will pay you for the top talent that you produce. Therefore, cost doesn't have to be a barrier to entry, and that's putting off 99.99% of the people, because let's face it, how many people can afford to pay 10 grand up front to learn a new skill, okay? And what we want to do is make sure that we're encouraging as many people to come on board. So by removing those barriers, it opens the doors to everybody. So it's really key to us that the entry is always free. In tech companies, finding good people is always the biggest barrier to growth and success. So companies are really willing to help, and that's why we have such an amazing community around the School of Code. And I know there's a lot of you guys in this room as well. Next, when we look at the skills gap, okay, it's also vital that we're arming people with the right skills. Do you know what I mean? We want to be able to drop them straight into a development team and get them to hit the ground running. So at School of Code, we focus on teamwork, soft skills, and all aspects of the software lifecycle. So we include things like project management and presentation skills, and we build that on top of the foundation of technical skills. Software development is now a team sport, and we want our graduates to come out not just as coders, but also as collaborative and creative problem solvers, and know how to work well with other people. So how are we doing so far? So far, I should say. Not too shabby, to be fair, okay? We are proud that at the School of Code, we have created a path for everyone to start accessing the fulfilling, prosperous, and in-demand careers in technology, as well as providing your tech teams with a diverse, ready-to-work pool of new tech talent. So far across the Midlands, we've been successful in bringing diverse cohorts of people together with a 50-50 gender split, age range of 18 to 60, so I wasn't the oldest when I did the course, ethnic demographics representing the local population. Our boot campers have come from incredibly diverse backgrounds, including, bear with me, I'm going to have to take a deep breath for this one, the unemployed, refugees, PhDs, musicians, artists, personal trainers, probation officers, return-to-work mums, teachers, school leavers, graduates, barbers, beauticians, air hostesses, retail workers, admin workers, warehouse workers, volcanologists, archaeologists, entrepreneurs, actors, and hospital porters. Okay. Okay, so you can see what an incredible mix that we have had. So it's so important as these changes affect us all, and these people bring new ways of thinking to companies, new thinking that companies so desperately need, and they are influenced by their previous roles and life experiences. As you can also see from the slide on this side, we then help them to start their tech careers as software engineers, UX and UI designers, as well as DevOps, QA, project management, and so much more. Okay, and we do this working with some amazing partners, such as The Economist, Bravissimo, Santander, all the way through to startups like Wise, Loop Testware, and BoxPopMe. We currently have an average of 85% employment rate, even during the COVID pandemic, which is increasing as more of our alumni pass through our aftercare recruitment process. And here are some of our amazing graduates, but like I said, some of them are in the room, so sorry we've used your picture without permission. Okay, so this is bootcamp 1, 2, and 3, which was pre-COVID, and then we have our remote bootcamps, which is 4 to 7. Okay, I am on there somewhere, so brownie points if you find me in cohort 4. Okay. So now the exciting news. We are going national, yay! Over the last 5 years, we've built a fantastic community that has transformed the local tech scene in the West Midlands, and now we are excited to be able to take our free bootcamp model across the country. Okay, this is where we're going to first. So on the 15th of November, the School of Code will be launching our skills bootcamps in 5 regions, impacting communities in the North West, West Midlands, East Midlands, London, and the South East, with the ultimate ambition that in the future it won't matter where you live, okay? Our mission is to reach across the whole of the UK to help as many people as we can through our transformational bootcamp journey. Oh my goodness, put me dentures in. Okay, through our transformational bootcamp journey and boost their local economy. And this is especially important after the upheaval of COVID. This expansion is enabling us to change the lives of 192 new boot campers, which is double what we've done to date, thanks to the funding from the Department of Education's Plan for Jobs scheme. This is a mammoth task, and over the last few months, we've been working behind the scenes, scaling up the business to rise to this challenge. So, do you love the mission? Come on, give me some love. Give me some love. Don't leave me hanging. Okay. And you want to help us crush this challenge, right? Because if so, we need every single one of you, okay? So how can you help? At the School of Code, we'd like to immerse our boot campers into industry so that we ensure that we involve companies at every step of the process. Whether it's coming in to do a day in the life talk about your role, becoming a hiring partner, or just championing the cause to your network, every bit helps. But today, I'm going to focus on mentoring, as these guys really are considered the superstars at the School of Code. Are you passionate about tech? Yeah, come on, okay. Do you want to get involved in helping to shape and inspire the next generation of coders? Yes. Then we need you. For our national boot camps, we need 192 mentors. Yes, I did say 192, and unfortunately, that's become my job to find them. Okay. But we're really lucky because we're already over halfway over the target because we've got some fantastic volunteers coming from all over the country. Okay, but we still need more. So as we take our new boot campers through our free life-changing intensive course, we're looking for mentors, both veteran and brand new, to volunteer just 30 minutes of your time per week to support them as they navigate their first steps in the world of tech. And we'd love to invite you and your teams to get involved. As a School of Code mentor, you'll get to share your knowledge, get the buzz of making a positive difference, and it doesn't look too shabby on your CV either, to be fair. If this would be your first time volunteering as a mentor, fear not, as you will be supported every step of the way. So what is mentoring at the School of Code all about? Our new boot campers are taking a step into the unknown by applying for the School of Code. The majority of them will not have seen a single line of code before joining the course. Their coding journey will be fraught with challenges and struggles, and in the spirit of helping them be the best that they can be, we assign each of them a mentor, okay? And what we're looking for is someone who is further on their tech journey to them, who can offer guidance, reassurance, and a sprinkle of technical nous to give them a nudge in the right direction. So all this sounds great, right? Okay, you guys are fired up, you're all with me and like, yeah, Anna, where do I sign? And then you think, actually, and then that imposter syndrome kicks in, right? You think, yeah, but what if they ask me something I don't know? Or what if they ask me to fix something and I haven't got a clue what they're on about? It's like, I'm not even a JavaScript developer. I don't know how I got in. Do you know what I mean? And what you've got to remember is we're not asking you to be perfect. So what I want to do is basically alleviate some of your fears, bust a few of those myths about what it is to be a mentor, and tell you what we don't expect you to be, and then tell you a little bit about what we're looking for. Okay. So, although quite a few of you in here look like this, okay, we're not expecting you to be perfect superhero coders. As a mentor, we don't expect you to know everything or be perfect. Let's face it, who does? And if Google and Stack Overflow went down for a couple of days, we'd all be stuffed, right? Okay. So it's important that we give boot campers realistic role models. Be honest with your mentee and vulnerable enough to tell them about your own struggles, challenges, and when you don't know something. This may be the first time that they are experiencing imposter syndrome, so it'll be comforting if they feel like you can relate to what they're going through. Don't feel like you have to pretend to know everything, but teach them the importance of getting just a little bit better each day. You don't need to be Yoda, okay? This might not go down too well. Wise is he, but leaves his student more questions than answers he does. Okay. Clear communication is key. Keep it simple and don't feel like you have to overcomplicate things and tie them in knots to show how much you know, okay? It's important to break things down and try and tailor your advice to the level they are at the part of the course where they're at. So obviously, at the beginning, they will know absolutely nothing, and they will increase their knowledge over the course. So just be mindful of that when you're talking to the new starters. And remember that they won't have the same context and same level of understanding as you. So it's good practice to brush up on your communication skills and explain the why and how questions that you do on autopilot, which they might need you to talk through. Lastly, you are not Alexa, okay? We do not expect you to just blurt out and give them all of the answers. It's important for the boot campers to learn how to learn, do their own detective work, and to try and break down and analyse the problems they come across. Think of it as giving them a fishing rod rather than giving them a fish. If you can, help model the process of learning, thinking, and doing, whilst also asking them questions, explaining and exploring context behind things. This is the invaluable support that the boot campers need. Okay, so moving on to what they actually need and what we are looking for, okay? What they actually need is a real example of a developer. This will be their first opportunity to regularly converse with somebody further along the tech journey than they are. You can guide and support them in learning the technical and soft skills required to be in a development team. It is not just about the code. Your mentee will often want to talk to you about how they're getting on the course, the industry, job roles, team dynamics, and what it's really like working in the tech industry. This is a great opportunity for them to hear all about your story, what life in tech has to offer, and to help encourage them on their own journey. You'll also be a sounding board who helps them to articulate their thoughts, come up with new ideas, and reflect on how things are going. I can remember, especially when it comes to project weeks, or maybe when you're working at something yourself at home on a personal project, and you get really excited and you want to tell your mentor all about this cool thing that you've made. So the conversations aren't always going to be, oh, I'm stuck on this piece of code. You know, we have great support at the School of Code. We have coding clubs, they have their coaches, etc. So a lot of the times, it's the things around that they really want to talk to you about. And lastly, and most importantly, we want you to be an encourager, okay? We want you to give them belief in themselves, challenge them to push a little harder, and celebrate their achievements and growth. From tentative first steps to watching them overcome challenges and finally landing their first job in tech. It's definitely a proud parent type moment when you see how far they've come at the end of the course. So what are the benefits to you, I hear you say? Unfortunately, we don't give out free beer, but after what's happened tonight, I think we might have to put that in the policy, to be fair. As one of the mentors, you will become part of the vibrant School of Code community, which includes a network of developers and companies who are passionate about tech and a great source of information and advice. You'll get to reinforce your own skills and knowledge through guiding someone else. You'll experience personal growth by developing leadership and management qualities, as well as improving your communication skills. Being a mentor looks great on your CV and is another valuable string to your bow. You'll increase your circle of friends, gain recognition for your skills and experience, and have an amazing sense of fulfillment as you know that you are making a real difference to your mentee's life, especially when you get to watch them start their first role in tech and know that you played a part in helping them achieve their goal. So are you up for the challenge? Yeah. Yay! Ready to inspire the next wave of software developers? Yay! Of course you are. Because remember, you don't have to be Yoda to be a kick-ass mentor, but you do have to be brave enough to try. Okay. Right, just one last thing. Thanks for listening. If you are interested in signing up as a mentor, you can scan the QR code here to go straight through to the form, or take a photo and do it later. I believe Fusion will also be sharing the details on their social media. But for more information, feel free to email me on anna-marie@schoolofcode.co.uk. It's Anna with an A, by the way, because everyone keeps calling me Anne-Marie. So it's ANNA-Marie@schoolofcode.co.uk, or you're welcome to connect with me via LinkedIn. So I look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your evening. Okay.
Cool, thank you very much, Anna-Marie. It's very important for the compere to actually get your name right, so I hope I've got it right throughout that. That was awesome. Thank you very much. Continuing the theme of if you've been living under a rock. I'm starting to regret writing this because it sounds like I'm sort of abusing everyone. But unless I think most of you might have noticed that there is a company called Gymshark that's doing relatively well in the region. Gymshark, since its foundation, have been, I mean, from the tech sort of front, from what I can see, have basically been hoovering up all of the top JavaScript talent in the region for about 2 years, including School of Code boot campers, actually. There's a couple. So we have someone from Gymshark tonight, which is awesome, and it's a subject that I'm quite sort of interested to hear about, because I did some work for a Shopify agency a while ago, and one of the things that was sort of hot off the press at that point was headless CMS stuff. So I did some sort of experimental stuff with Contentful, and I really like Contentful and Prismic. So luckily, that is what you've come here to speak on. Please welcome to the stage, everybody, Gymshark's Chris Evans.
All right, welcome to the most chaotic presentation of the evening. Where is the dongle? technical issues. Yeah, pretty much. One sec. Yeah, it's Mac. Oh.
Honestly, I think it'll be this.
Do you think? You can do it. You can do it. Hey. Right. Okie dokie. So, hey. All right, guys. My name's Chris Evans. That's me. I'm a lead engineer at Gymshark. Not been there long, since January. And I'm here to talk to you about Headless Made Easy and why it really bloody isn't. So what is Headless? I'm sure you guys know, but just to recap, it's basically a client engineering architecture where you have a front end that is separated from the back end, which is not a monolith, i.e. .NET back in the day. Sorry, oh, he's gone. And like, in a sense, Headless is us wanting greater control over the technology that we use and the solutions that we build, because as a business, we want to build really cool products. In the context of Gymshark, we are a Shopify house, kind of, and that's our monolith. And at present, because our ecosystem is built in Shopify, we have some issues. It's a great product, and we've kind of outgrown the software. We've got requirements coming in that are, that our vendor cannot cater for. Sorry, this is my first time speaking, so I'm actually bricking it. So why do we want to do this? Why is Headless? Understanding why we can't lean on our vendors any longer. So the first thing we want is we want to be global. We want to be well received and respected in the global market. Unfortunately, we can't do that. Shopify's theme tools are great, but they're not great for managing an effective localization strategy. We're trying to support multiple languages per store. We want to manage a locale simply without having to copy and paste and recreate content 14 times because we have 14 stores. It's a bit of a nightmare. But we just can't do this. We also want to be scalable. So we serve a lot of incoming traffic per day, peaking during our summer and Black Friday sales. At present, we have to turn off a lot of vital application features, payment providers, our user accounts. This isn't great for them because it means they don't have a paper trail. Once we've switched off accounts, they have to go through guest checkout. They lose kind of like that consolidated view of their purchases. We're looking to be innovative. We don't just want to be a fashion label. We want to make some cool tech. And we want to kind of rival our competitors, but at the moment it's difficult because of our lock-in with Shopify. We're kind of stuck with what we can do within their playground. And then we want to be responsible. We want control of our technology and what we build. And because we don't own half of that stack, we don't control kind of the build, the serve of our site. We can't build effective disaster recovery strategies. So things like Fastly CDN outage, that hit us quite hard. We weren't able to recover, and we just had to kind of sit and wait on the end of a phone for their support team to kind of say, yeah, it's back on. And we want all of this, but we have a problem. Our problem is that we can't just tell Gymshark, all of our stakeholders, to stop for 18 months while we rebuild their site when it's already working. Big problem, actually. And so what we need to do is figure out how we provide business value and also do all the cool tech shit that we want to do. So getting into the meat and taters, this is this is the good stuff. How do we actually achieve what I've just kind of rather badly explained? Well, to begin, basically we got all the top guys, the chief dogs, into a group, and we said, like, how do we do this, and what do we want from it if we embark on this journey? And these are like cool little whiteboard drawings that we did of what we wanted and how we were going to align it with our product vision. And from that, we kind of we kind of came to a conclusion of 4 really, really important product or engineering pillars, concepts that we wanted to integrate into our current engineering processes. So we've got atomic design. Basically, I'm going to read from the slide now, very sorry. But atomic design is the methodology composed of 5 distinct stages of working together to create an interface design system in a more deliberate and hierarchical manner. There are atoms, molecules, organisms, templates, and pages. What that means to us is we basically, essentially, we break up our interface systems into flexible and reusable parts at varying levels of feature fidelity so that we can make up a whole at the end of it, which is our website. The next thing we agreed on was design systems. This is something we don't have at the moment, and all of the big cats do. For us, a design system, sorry, I saw the next slide and got a bit confused. So for us, a design system is all about collaborating and with design to develop a language that we can both speak and understand. At its very basic, our design system is basically an assemblage of user interface components that we both use to build our products. And with this shared language, it's incredibly easy for us to build new experiences and maintain consistency across our digital portfolio. On to number 3, micro front ends. So at Gymshark, we won't have independent mission teams, which is the kind of classic definition of micro front ends. There is a team dedicated to a specific vertical slice or feature. But what we are looking to do is adopt that ideology, and we will build product features and slices that have the potential to cut across multiple digital solutions in isolation to create robust and adaptable building blocks for future product. And the last one, Independency Injection. And I know you shouldn't be writing classes in JavaScript because the internet says it's bad, but that's what we do. For us, defining and agreeing upon a common contract that all of our engineering disciplines follow is just good practice. Combining it with a contract-first approach and the inversion of control principle and dependency injection gives us a really distinct advantage, which is agility. We can use all of the building blocks that I've just described in the previous slides and configure them via a top-down approach. We can adapt and change our service implementations to suit the product we're building. We can even actually swap out concrete classes at runtime to enable feature implementation toggles, which are slightly different feature toggles, and A/B testing, because what it means is we now don't have to choose whether something is on or off. We can choose how it is handled when a situation occurs, i.e. we have an outage or we have a sale event where one vendor can't cater for our traffic needs. We can kind of just swap it out and stick something else in. So this all sounds great, but what does it actually look like? So this beautiful diagram is our, this is how we used to build, and still do to a degree. We have 3 distinct layers. We've got our packages, which are like a set of interdependent packages. They're all referencing each other, which are like our small bits. We've got buttons, we've got icons, we've got services. Then we have a micro application layer, which are store components, if you will. They're not even slices or features. We've got things like store configuration, we've got headers, we've got footers, we've got collections, which is where you browse all the cool, sexy leggings. And then we have the application layer, which is our Shopify site. It's powered by Shopify configuration. It's got a liquid store theme built on Slate, which is deprecated. And then in there is a really nifty piece of technology called Hydra, which the team, I didn't build this, the team at Gymshark built, which is basically a kind of React portal manager where it finds DOM hooks within our Shopify site and then just shoves React components in there while maintaining state and shared data across the pages. And this is what we kind of want to achieve. So we've got our foundation, which is our design system, and our standard library. the standard library is basically common abstractions, utilities that we use every day, HTTP clients, etc. Then we have our micro front-end layer, which is vertical slices and features. So we've got identity, cart, product, wish list. And then we've got our application layer at the top, which is kind of the sites that you actually visit, like Careers, 66, or our e-com application where we sell sexy leggings. And then we've got our environment variables, which kind of drive the environment config, which is new for us. This also fits into the atomic design system because at its base, our design system is like our atoms and molecules. We've got our micro front-end layer, those are our organisms. And then within our applications, we have our templates, and that's kind of how we bring everything together. So say we have a product card that allows you to wish list the item. We bring product and wish list together and kind of mash them together in a template in a way that makes sense and looks good. Didn't mean to hit the table. So, what benefits does this offer? Like, can it grill my tuna melt? It can't, but there are 3 really cool things that it does do. It's application agnostic, which basically means we can stick it anywhere we want. The actual implementation isn't tied to a specific application. Therefore, it's isolated and it's replicable. So wherever we stick it, we know it's going to work the same. Then we've got isolated and fully testable. This is good because it means that we can actually start to really drill down and test our components. Through our kind of IOC architecture, we can mock up all of our dependencies. And we can even we can build entire user journeys and not even hit an API. And we can test that the user journey works in isolation from the API calls, from every other kind of orbital service that we would require to serve it in production. And then incremental adoption, which is probably the most important one for us, because we don't have to refactor everything now, and we shouldn't. This basically allows us to break up this mammoth project of rebuild a website into like manageable pieces of work where we can, as we kind of get product definitions in, as we get product requirements and new features in, we can start to revisit our old code and refactor it and reintroduce it in our new way without kind of touching every little aspect of what makes the Gymshark e-com site, and there's a lot of it. So how do we onboard new hires into our new standards and processes? Because not everyone's going to know what I've just talked about, especially like the guys that from the code camps, they might feel a little bit lost as it can be a bit engineering heavy. We thought long and hard about this. So our first kind of output is handbooks, and what we've kind of committed to and haven't completed yet is writing handbooks across about all of the kind of technical concepts and pillars that are important to us and make our software. So we've got things like service injection, the 12-factor ideology, automation, application configuration, and these are basically like quick reference guides that just illustrate the concept for anybody who hasn't kind of encountered it before. The next bit we have is Tech Academy. So this is basically just a really, really fancy rebrand of workshops. Basically, in addition to the reading material, we wanted to get serious about upskilling people and upskilling the team. So we rebranded those workshops. And Tech Academy is about offering them plus tech talks on subjects that plug the knowledge gaps amongst our teammates. So they're kind of like an on-request thing, or where we see that there are knowledge gaps, we hold these workshops to hopefully make people's lives easier and allow them to kind of ease into some of the more difficult engineering concepts. And then finally we have guilds. This isn't a new concept either, but at Gymshark we've kind of rallied together to create this front-end guild. The guild meetings are had every month, and they're to discuss new ideas and any problems that we are facing in our daily duties. So the team collectively sets the agenda of the meetings by adding talking points to a guild planner, and we go through them one by one, making decisions, determining the actions to be taken, and assigning said actions to the team. Yeah, this is this is probably one really, really important thing for us that we learned recently. Understanding the strengths of individuals to build well-rounded teams. Within front-end development, there's like a wide array of disciplines and topics, and not everyone's going to be the best at everything. You go from data flow and management to accessibility, design, or asset optimization and SEO, big, broad subjects. So understanding who's good at what and then grouping them with engineers of different strengths enables those teams to support themselves. Without that, the teams will crumble because they're too heavy in one single area. And that's not what we want. So, drawing to a conclusion, what have we learned over the past few months? Aligning our technical roadmap with the product roadmap to deliver product value and technical advancement at the same time is a win-win. These charts are very technical. And for us, Headless isn't just an implementation anymore. It's actually a whole new way of building, ideating, and collaborating, because we can't just rebuild the site. We have to think further than technology, which is a really weird route to go down when you're an engineering department. Now I've got something a bit sexy for you. It's a little extra. I don't think the guys at Gymshark have seen any of this yet. So it's a top secret dossier, but it's something I really want to call Project Bruce. And it's because project managers and owners are friends, not food. And bear with me for a second. Because we began to realize that Headless for us was no longer about rebuilding the website, we had another kickoff session on what we actually thought it was. And we began by defining pillars, themes that consistently crop up throughout our product roadmap. These are on the board, you can't see them. They're localization, identity, content, purchase, and release. Localization is serving translations and localized content, variations per store. Identity is about being part of the Gymshark ecosystem through accounts and memberships. Content is what we put out there and how we go about it. Purchase is purchasing. And release is the only technical one there, which is about enabling faster product iteration and removing manual processes from our development and deployment routines. I think at the moment it takes us about a week to be able to release a update to our website, which is incredibly long and slow manual process. And we can't release during high traffic periods like our sales, because we're just not confident that it'll work. But because of this, it kind of parented an idea. What if we work to solve the problems the Gymshark way by building our own internal tools instead of focusing on building websites? So what you can kind of see here is my haphazard drawings. And it's the idea that as front-end engineers, we shouldn't be concerned with building sites or updating and amending content. We could and should shift the responsibility of marketing, product, photography, videography, social, back to the departments that really excel in those areas. So what if we built like a custom page builder or custom site builder that worked the same way that we at Gymshark worked? And in doing that, like, our stakeholders could build their own content, they can build their own sites. No backlog, no prioritization, no devs saying no, which actually leaves us to work on real game-changing technology to set the company apart. So what does the future of fitness look like, and how can we as engineers contribute to that? So next time, if there's a next time, that I'm standing here and I'm not shaking like a leaf. It will be about how we built jetpacks and sent Ben Francis to space with a pizza. Do you have any questions?
Three, 1, 2, 3, there we go. First of all, before we take questions, can I have a round of applause, please, for Chris? And secondly, I'm going to be naughty and stay sitting, because the first question is from Me. I'm abusing my privilege here. Given what happened last week with the infamous Facebook DNS situation, which was a company of this size that does microservices is never going to have a single point of failure, have you discussed internally within the team about the fact that essentially the core of what you've described is microservicing on top of Shopify? What if Shopify goes down?
We haven't discussed this. I think our plan is to move as much away from Shopify as possible, apart from the stuff that it does really well,
like
which
the
is
the core payment stuff.
Yeah, payments, processing, that kind of stuff. But yeah, if Shopify goes down, we're screwed.
Kind of wish I hadn't asked that now. Right. Questions open up to the floor. Indeed.
That was a great job for your first time, by the way, Chris.
Oh, thanks.
So one of the things that came across, you did a very good job of presenting that. One of the things that came across in your talk is, it sounds like you've had to build a lot of things on top of quite a difficult architecture. And my question is how difficult is it to work with Shopify? Like, how easy is it to work with Shopify to get where you want to get to? Like, are they happy for you to try and get there? Is it, because they've got their own kind of product path, and you're just one of their very many things. And you've had to build, obviously, a lot of tools to make it work for you, and you're trying to make it go somewhere. How difficult is it to work with Shopify to get there?
Well, we haven't discussed this with Shopify, but I'm sure they won't be too sad, because I think we cause them as much problems as kind of like difficulties around engineering that we have. It's a really good question, and I don't know if I have an answer. But I think what we're planning to do is, like, Shopify has the, what's it called, the Storefront Api, and I think that's kind of, that they've got their own headless offering, and what we want to do is we want to start to move towards that. We already have app teams that are headless, so they already utilize Shopify in this way. So we're a bit behind just because of our legacy, so it's just about, and this approach is about incrementally moving away from the things that Shopify isn't so good at for us, but still keeping with them for the stuff that is good, and we can leverage that through their APIs that they've kind of recently popped out.
And got one from the front over here.
Hi, I know you guys have actually approached a lot of universities, especially in the West Midlands. Have you guys approached School of Code yet?
We already have. I think
Fantastic.
There's 3. I think we have 3 in the front end team. Yeah.
including specifically from cohort 1 at the beginning, if I remember correctly. At the back.
Hey Chris, thanks for the talk. Really useful stuff. My company is actually going through something of a similar transition. I really wanted to ask you about this. How do you kind of scope out the level of freedom that the marketing and creative teams have when they're creating your, when they're using your internal tools to then create and publish content? I think one of the issues we had was they kind of wanted to create more complex layouts. They wanted to have more freedom with what they could do with images, and then it kind of turns into we're building an in-house CMS here. Is this really worth our time?
I mean, I feel like that's probably what we're heading towards, but we have one, we're really great buddies with design, and at the end of the day, whatever design says goes. So if the marketing guys are going to come up to us and ask, no, I'm not going to say that. We're going to give them as much flexibility as design allows us to give them.
And I've got one more from the chat rooms, but I need to go back to my phone to read it, because I'm not going to read it off my phone, off my watch, because that's ridiculous. How long has it taken for Gymshark to get to where they are in this headless implementation? And how long does Chris predict it will take till they go to where they want to finish?
So, that's a question. We're actually quite new to all of this. I think it's been a month and a half. So it's quite new for us. We're literally at the beginning of the journey, mapping out and trying to scope out like what we're trying to do. As far as time goes, I've absolutely no idea. Until we've kind of properly scoped out the entire project, we're probably not going to know. But I think that's the kind of reasoning behind the incremental adoption, is that we don't need to define a timeline for a lot of it, because we can say we're working towards product value just in this new way, and in the background somewhere stealthily down in a basement we'll kind of rebuild all of the stuff that's already there. But I don't think that's been our focus as of yet, so it's something that we'll be moving towards in the future.
So, can everybody give another hand for Chris? Thanks, Chris. That was kind of fascinating, having first-hand experience of the limitations of Shopify and then talking to lots of people whose main talking point is how to customize and then get off Shopify once they're completely locked in. Shopify is fantastic for the world of tech. I'm not going to do them down. Right, moving on to our last and final, last but not least, speaker of the evening. I think it's fair to say, thinking on the subject that Mark's going to speak about, I have seen the blog post and documentation provided by the teams at Monzo and at Uber, and when you see their setup of their microservices, their serverless microservices, and the way their lambdas work, it's genuinely terrifying, and maybe it's just because I'm a bit of a monolith dinosaur. So here to speak from Goldman Sachs, specifically on serverless architecture, serverless apps, or SaaS service, software as a service. Please welcome from Goldman Sachs, Mark Perkin.
Set up here. Hello everyone, let me just get plugged in. Is it this one?
It's
oh, I see, the last one was already Apple.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right. Okay. Are we in business? It's plugged in. Same problem as last time.
Definitely not plugging it back in again after taking it out.
Oh, I think we're getting somewhere.
There we go.
Okay, well, hello everyone. Thanks for having us here. We're really pleased and honoured to be invited to speak at Fusion. I don't know if any of you guys know, but Goldman Sachs are pretty brand new to Birmingham. We just opened our new office. We're currently hanging out at the WeWorks on Coleman Row while we're waiting for our building to be built. You know, and as a person who comes from the north of England, I've been working at Goldman in London for 10 years. I'm really quite proud that we've come up north and that we're, bringing our business up here. And, seeing all you guys tonight and the wealth of talent here, I'm pretty damn confident we made a good choice. So, anyway, so like I said, my name's Mark, and I'm CTO, believe it or not, of a new business that we're incubating it as part of Goldman Sachs' internal incubation program, which is called GS Accelerate. And I want to talk a little bit about GS Accelerate, but I also want to talk about what it is that we've built. We're building a new SaaS-based platform. We're building it all on AWS, and we're building it all serverless. So I'll give a quick overview of what serverless is. Then I'll explain why we chose serverless. We'll have a quick look at our target architecture. Some of the lessons learned. Now, this is important because we were brand new to AWS. For a long time, Goldman Sachs' technology has been living in its own internal ecosystem. We've been inside this walled garden, building everything in a proprietary way. We're now bursting out of this into this brave new world of cloud vendors. So we've learned a lot along the way. And hopefully, I may be able to help you decide if serverless is right for you. Okay? So, I don't know why that that's not going like that. So GS Accelerate. Now this is a really, really cool program we have at Goldman, where basically every year we invite all our engineers to submit any ideas they may have. These could be ideas for internal process improvements, or it could be an idea for a brand new business. It was started in 2018. Since then, there's been some 1,800 submissions. 10 teams have graduated through the program, and there's 7 which are active. So myself and a very small group of colleagues, one of whom is here tonight, we submitted an idea last year. We were one of, I think there were 300 submissions that year. We then had to go through a lengthy whittling down process, and in the end, there were 3 teams that were selected for funding. So we all quit our regular departments, and on March the 1st, we effectively formed what I can only describe as a startup, but inside the umbrella of Goldman Sachs. On March the 1st, we had no team and not a single line of code. We've now grown to 30, and we're still growing rapidly and hiring, and we have 45,000 lines of code, which I'm terrified about as a CTO, because that's 45,000 things to go wrong. And we're going live next month with our minimum viable product. So what exactly is serverless? So I've pulled a quote here from the Wikipedia page, because I think it sums it up really nicely. Developers of serverless applications are not concerned with capacity planning, configuration, management, maintenance, fault tolerance, scaling of containers, virtual machines, or physical servers. That sounds pretty cool, right? I mean, that's a lot of stuff to look after and a lot of stuff to go wrong. So if I don't have to do that, I'm in for that. Now, it takes different forms. I think when a lot of people talk about serverless, they immediately think about function as a service, or, you know, for those of you who use AWS, that would be their Lambda service. So function as a service is effectively compute on demand, where you've got a single function and some event triggers it, and when that trigger happens, you are allocated some compute resource to run that function, and then that resource is reallocated somewhere else, and you just get charged for the amount of compute you use for that brief period of time. But this isn't the only kind of serverless. We can also, you know, we may have an elastic container running on some compute. We can provision and manage that compute ourselves, or we can let our cloud vendor do it for us. So this is also serverless, but unlike function as a service, you are provisioning continuously running compute, so you're going to be paying for that compute regardless of whether you're actually using it or not. And I'll get into this a little bit later, that there's pros and cons with the 2 different models. And then, you know, serverless isn't just for your own application logic computation. You can also have serverless databases. So again, we're just extending the serverless model, and all your DB operations execute on cloud resources, and you just pay for what you use. So this is what serverless is. Why did we choose serverless for our application? Now, I can't go into too much detail about all the business technicalities, because we're still building it, and it's not live yet. But I can say that we're building a software as a service platform. We are offering it to our customers, to our tenants, via portals and APIs. But really, the portal and API interaction with the platform is only a tiny part of what the system does. The customers who will use this platform, what they really want is what the platform is doing for them when they're not on it. There is a whole complex mesh of back-end scheduled operations which are executed, which are fulfilling the function that we're building. So it's not just events from the outside world, like if you're using Google Maps, you're only really using it when you're using it. It's more what it's doing when you're not using it that's important. And this all happens based on a schedule, essentially. We're firing events, depending on the passage of time. We also got to build integration with other vendors in the industry. Now, one of the observations about our platform, which is key, is its ludicrously spiky compute demand. I mean ridiculously spiky. We can go for hours and the platform won't be needing any compute whatsoever. and then we may need to schedule 100,000 concurrent tasks in a 5-minute period. So this is what really motivated us, not just for serverless, but particularly for function as a service and AWS Lambda. It was this idea that we could get this massive bursty compute on demand without having to deal with any complex configuration or custom scaling policies. We would deploy 100,000 tasks and we would get the resources from the cloud vendor to do that. And this really allows us to just focus on the business logic and not focus on managing infrastructure. So that was us, and that was why we chose serverless. So this is a very simplified view then of our target architecture. Now we have gone for a microservices-based approach, and what you're seeing here on the slide is just an idealized picture of what each service looks like. It's a little bit more complex than this in reality, but roughly this is the architecture. You see the entry point coming into our AWS VPC is to a network load balancer. There is a whole stack of stuff on top of that, which I haven't put on the slide here, as we have to go through DMZs and various other layers. But the entry point for us in our application is this network load balancer. We've adopted a contract-first based approach for all our microservices. So we basically write those in code as OpenAPI 3 contracts or Swagger. And we can then provision what's called an AWS API gateway, and that is the entry point to each of our services. Attached to the AWS API gateway, we use something called a Lambda authorizer. So this is part of AWS's offering. It basically gives you a way of plugging in your own authentication mechanism. So in our case, we've written a little Lambda authorizer that can handle the OIDC communication back to the tenant's identity server. Initially, our first tenant will be ourselves, but in the future, we will have many other tenants. So let's say that the incoming REST call gets past the API gateway, it gets past the Lambda authorizer, it then goes to this API event handler, and this is where the business logic starts. Now I'll pause there and just jump over to the ECS Fargate node. Because one of the things we discovered when we were building this is Lambdas are really great if you want to run an execution and you've got a trigger. But what if the trigger is you yourself? You know, if you need to generate the event, if you haven't got any compute running, you can't generate an event. And as I mentioned before, we have this complex series of scheduled events which need to be fired. So these are all stored, these schedules, in our database. We've chosen Aurora Serverless for that. And in order to trigger those, we did have to deploy one continuously running service, which we deploy on ECS Fargate. So ECS is, for those of you that use Kubernetes, ECS is just AWS's version of Kubernetes. So we were very attracted to Lambda because we wanted this ability to scale to zero. So that means if the platform's not doing anything, we shouldn't be paying anything. We almost got there. The only thing in this whole architecture which is continuously running is that ECS Fargate node. But it doesn't really do much work. All it's doing is running an infinite loop and comparing the current time against the scheduled time of the events in the Aurora Serverless database. And if a timer is reached, we then trigger a Lambda to actually do the work. So we don't really think we need to scale this Fargate node up as the volume of traffic on our site increases, because the work will all be happening in the Lambdas, which are inherently horizontally scalable anyway. Now, what happens then in each of these event handlers? So as you can see, there's two types of event handlers. We've got a scheduled event handler, and we've got an API event handler. So essentially, timed events hit the scheduled event handler, external events hit the API event handler. Doesn't matter what the event is, the functionality is the same. We read the state from the database, we execute some business logic, and then we write back to the database in a single transaction. It's the same pattern for every event handler. Now, The only problem that can occur is we want concurrency, but there are some very small cases when we actually want sequential operation. So let me give you an example. Imagine you're building, I don't know, an order management system, and you've got, let's say there's a certain type of product, and you've only got one of them left in stock in your inventory. If you receive 2 orders for that product at exactly the same time, and you try to process them both concurrently, the handlers may both think, oh, there's one item left in the stock, and they can fulfill the order and acknowledge back to the customer. When in fact, that's impossible, right? Because we can't fulfill 2 orders when we've only got an inventory of 1. We have exactly the same problem. So how did we solve it? We solved it using something called granular optimistic locking. So in most cases, the chances of that sort of collision that I just described in our platform are extraordinarily rare, but they can happen, and so we needed to guard against it. And the way we guard against it is we partition our system according to a partition key. So going back to the order example, the partition key could be the product, right? If we receive 500 orders for 500 different products, they can all go in parallel. But receive 500 orders for the same product, they need to go sequentially. Now we assume that there isn't going to be a collision. So when an event comes in, whether it's a time event or an external event, we'll run our handler, we'll query the state, we'll do our business logic, and then we'll write back to the state. But when we do that query of the database, each of our orders, if you will, each of our products has a sequence number. And when we write back to the database, we write back with a sequence number incremented by 1. We have a constraint that a product and a sequence number has to be unique. So what will happen, if that rare case happens when 2 Lambda handlers happen to be processing the same product, there'll be a collision in the database. One will succeed, one will fail, and the failed one will have to just retry the transaction with the newer state. So this is how we achieve massive horizontal scalability, but have this protection on those very rare cases when there is a collision. So we have this architecture. We've replicated it, I think, across around 8 microservices. And this is what it looks like. Okay, so as I said, at Goldman Sachs, we are kind of new to the cloud. We were living inside a Goldman Sachs bubble for many, many years, and we're only just breaking out. And this project, most people on the team were brand new to AWS. So, there's a big learning curve. What did we learn? Now, we thought we weren't very latency sensitive because most of the operations happen on the back end off the back of timers, and if the timed event gets scheduled a second late or 2 seconds late, it's not a big deal for us. But we did find that lambdas were a bit of an issue on the front end. So as a user is using the portal, we were getting timeouts because the portal itself may be quite infrequently accessed. And what can happen with AWS Lambda, if you don't keep hitting those lambdas and don't keep using them, then AWS takes the compute away and gives it to something else. The next time you try and invoke that lambda, you pay a cold start time. And this was sufficient for us to get timeouts on our portal operations. So we did manage to solve this using a feature of the AWS platform that is relatively new called provisioned concurrency, where you can still run AWS Lambdas, but you can specify a minimum number of Lambdas for the platform to keep warm so you don't get any of these timeouts. So this was one of the lessons learned. Now, there's an interesting observation here that by using provisioned concurrency, we've kind of violated that principle of scaling to 0, which is what we were attracted by Lambda in the first place. We're sort of halfway now in between function as a service and just provisioning continuously running services. Because you do, of course, pay AWS for provisioned concurrency. They don't offer it for free. However, when we looked at our profile and our costing, the cost incurred by the provisioned concurrency was relatively minimal, so we were comfortable with it. Second lesson learned AWS Lambdas, I don't know if any of you have used them, but they have size limitations. When we first started developing our application, we are a Python house, by the way, our developers were using a framework called Flask, which is a very popular framework for developing REST services in Python. When it came time to run these on AWS Lambda, we simply bundled up the entire Flask application into the Lambda handler function, which is a bit of an anti-pattern, it turns out, because Lambdas have size limitations. And funnily enough, just today in the office, we blew through the limit of the size of the Lambdas because our packages were too big. We're pulling in too many dependencies and we're creating something that's just too large. And this really isn't what Lambda's for. Python Flask is a framework for a standalone server application. You know, it creates a HTTP listening port, it has dispatchers and routing logic inside it. You don't need that with Lambda. AWS API Gateway and Lambda gives you all of that. All you need to do with Lambda is write your small function to handle your business logic. So this is something we need to fix urgently. The other thing that you came across with Lambda was the deployment granularity. Now, we've mentioned monoliths and microservices already this evening. So in a monolith, as you know, you've got one version of your software, and when you want to release a new version, all the software has to go to production in one go. It's a big, scary operation, so you only do it once every 3 months, and you probably have to, bring your entire system down for the weekend in order to do so. So quite rightly, many teams over the last decade have been moving to a microservices-based architecture. In a microservice architecture, you break up the monolith into lots of coherent services that do one very clear function, and the microservices communicate with each other over very well-defined APIs. They don't share any state, they don't share any databases. And by using these very strict contracts, we then have this ability to push these services independently. So you can have different teams owning different services, each developing, testing, and deploying on their own cadence. Happy days, pretty good. Everything can now stay in production, and you're pushing to production all the time. So what does this mean for Lambda then? So if Lambda, I'm going even more micro now, that I can actually create a function as a service. If I've got, I don't know, let's say 200 discrete Lambda functions in my code base, should I have the ability to push them into production completely independently, or should I always push them all together in one big lump? Well, it turns out that you don't want to do them all independently, because it's very rare you're going to have a Lambda that basically takes its input, does some computation, and provides an output without reference to anything else. Generally speaking, a Lambda function will do some business logic and talk to a database. And generally speaking, other Lambda functions will share that same database. So really all we're talking about here is the microservice architecture, but you're just splitting up all of your operations into Lambda functions. So what we decided to do was exactly that. We take all the Lambdas that are part of the same service, and they are all developed, tested, and released together. Okay, one more thing we found very challenging was observability. So again, with Lambdas on AWS, every time you create a Lambda function, it creates what's called a new CloudWatch log group. Figuring out what's actually happening on your application and looking at your logs becomes a bit tricky. I remember the old days when I wanted to debug something, I would just tail the log file, and I'd see all the inputs coming in, and I'd see what was happening on the log file. It was really, really easy. Now I go onto my AWS console, and I've got these 200 different log groups, and I can't figure out what the hell's going on. So observability is a lot more challenging when you're on AWS Lambda. Now, there are some solutions. We haven't decided what we're going to go for yet, but AWS does have the ability to configure those log groups and stream those logs into their own hosted version of Elasticsearch. There are some other teams within Goldman Sachs who are on AWS. They're using a vendor product called Datadog. We haven't decided yet, but we're going live in a month, so we need to decide pretty soon. So these are some of the lessons learned. So for your applications that you're building, is it right for you? I mean, generally I would say that serverless is definitely a massive advantage because you don't have infrastructure to own. The cost of ownership is so much lower. Looking after servers, patching servers is a pain. And why would you do that if you can get your cloud vendor to do it for you? Now, there are some cases you will find that when you're on a serverless architecture, you will have fewer options. For example, Fargate is AWS's serverless container orchestrator. The nodes in Fargate are limited to a maximum of 4 virtual CPUs. If you're provisioning EC2 nodes directly, you can provision them with up to 128 virtual CPUs. Now, we don't have any requirements for running some massively multi-threaded application that would make use of 128 cores, but maybe you do. And if you do, then serverless probably isn't for you. Similarly, if you look at the serverless database operation from AWS, Aurora Serverless, it only supports the Postgres and MySQL drivers. Again, that was fine for us. We use Postgres. But if you want to use Oracle or a few of the other options, then serverless may not be a choice. Now, of course, even if you do choose serverless, there are some trade-offs between whether you want to go for Lambdas, function as a service, or whether you just want to go for provisioning serverless hosts continuously. If you have, you can still have, volatile, not volatile, you can still have spiky compute demand and provision servers. If your compute demand is very predictable, then you can actually provision those servers ahead of time. And if you are able to do that, you actually may get a more cost-effective solution than just letting AWS spin up services on demand, as in the Lambda use case. And you may also get better latency if you do it that way, because you won't ever incur the cold start times. And then the other key thing is, if you are in a situation where you require very predictable low latency, then we certainly wouldn't recommend Lambda. But again, that wasn't our particular use case. So I hope that's given you a bit of an overview of our journey. It's been very fast. Like I say, we've gone from no lines of code on March the 1st to 45,000. We've been learning AWS along the way. We've been building up a brand new office here in Birmingham. We've been hiring furiously. We continue to hire furiously. This new business that we're building will be headquartered in our Birmingham office. Will be where some 2/3 of all the staff will sit, but we also have some of the team in Dallas in the United States. We're really, really excited about it. We're excited to be on the cloud. We're excited to be in Birmingham. Any questions? Shoot.
You've got to wait for me to turn the mic on. Otherwise, no one can hear on the stream. So, first of all, a round of applause, obviously. And just let me get this on. Sorry, yeah, first question, was that you, Indy? No, there was a hand up? What was it? Please hold the mic this time.
So I've got a two-part question.
Okay.
And the first is, you were saying that Goldman Sachs has got their own historically their own data centers, so you've made the leap to move to cloud.
Correct.
So that's one big hurdle. And my first part of the question is, how did you convince your kind of corporate masters that was a good idea to go from a very different kind of architecture? And the second part of the question is, you've obviously picked an architecture that locks you into Amazon quite a bit. And so, you've gone from, we're going to go from our data center to cloud, but also we're going to lock ourselves into some very Amazon-centric tech.
Okay, I'll answer both of those. So the first question is, how did we persuade our corporate overlords that we could go onto AWS? Well, fortunately, we weren't the first business to go onto cloud. There have been two very successful businesses, one called, I don't know if you know, but Goldman Sachs actually have a savings account. You can open a savings account now. It's called Marcus by Goldman. They were one of the first GS teams to go onto the cloud. And we also have a treasury banking service called Transaction Banking, and they were one of the first to go onto AWS. That said, it is not easy. When you're inside the walled garden of Goldman Sachs and everything is all, on our own local subnets, the standards of security that we need to adhere to are, vanishingly small. So doing everything on AWS and all the extra tech risk reviews that we had to go through was quite difficult. But yes, we were rather fortunate that, 2 other teams had kind of punched a hole through to a degree. So that's the first part of your question. The second part was, what about vendor lock-in? So we've chosen a microservices-based architecture, and we've divided up our system into completely independent services. The only way they talk to each other is through a REST API. So there's an OpenAPI 3 contract, and there is a URL. In theory, if we decided that, one of our services would be better ported over to Google Cloud Compute, we could just take that one service and port it over. So we don't feel that we're being completely locked in. And I know that you could attempt to say, well, I don't want to, lock into this vendor, so I'm going to create some layers of abstraction that abstracts me away from the underlying vendor. But in our experience, these layers of abstraction, they never work because you end up abstracting to some lowest common denominator. And the whole point of selecting a cloud vendor is because you want to use some feature. I think Google have a database called Spanner, which provides globally consistent reads and writes. It's really, really powerful. We've got a team within Goldman who are actually using that to build a new system. And they are completely locked in to that feature of Google. But the point is, as a firm, we're building stuff on AWS, we're building stuff on GCP, we're building stuff on Azure. We're trying to split it up into services. We're trying to be disciplined about using contracts. So in a way, we're not really locked in. It's just each service is locked in. So, yeah.
Cool. Anyone else? All quiet on the floor. The only question that's I'm being gestured at, which means that there's probably a question online. Actually, that last question was almost the one that I was going to ask, which was knowing what kind of banks are like. How on earth did you manage to get past the the tech that was already there? Okay, we've got an online question here. How do you manage local offline development across the entire stack, which I guess comes into that kind of observability a bit, doesn't it?
Local offline development?
Local versus offline.
Do you mean local as in how do developers test locally?
Develop locally?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
well,
or offline. So how do you develop when you might be offline?
So can a Goldman Sachs developer take their MacBook to the top of a mountain away from any Wi-Fi and be happily coding? No, is the answer.
That's a pretty solid answer, I think.
So you do have to be connected to the network. We are investing heavily. There's a team dedicated to developer experience. At the moment, there is room for improvement in that department, I won't lie. But there has been talk in the past of getting hardened MacBooks so people could develop locally, but I don't think that's the direction of travel. I think we're going to end up, with remote machines that developers develop on. So yes, you do need a connection to the internet. But you could imagine the risk of, if I had all those 45,000 lines of code on this MacBook and I drink too many beers and I just leave it and go home tonight, it's just too much of a risk.
This question sort of branches into the same questions I always have when it comes to serverless architecture like this. But is there like a staging Lambda environment that you can put something through to test it first?
Well, yeah, absolutely. So one of the things every developer at Goldman Sachs gets is something we call the Skylab account. A Skylab account is your own private paid-for account on AWS. You can, develop your own code. You can provision your own resources. You can play around with stuff and experiment. So yeah, we do support that.
Okay, cool. Now we do. Oh, okay. Do my little run. Where are we?
Hey, thanks for the talk.
No worries.
So I have two questions. One of them is, do you use any infrastructure as code? Like, do you use Terraform, or did you use cloud formations to build out your services? And the second question is, roughly how much percentage of your expenses did you save by going to cloud?
Okay, I think I can answer the first one, and I'm not sure about the second one. So the first one is, currently, yes, we do use Terraform Enterprise. That is our model of deployment. However, our developer experience team are currently experimenting with something called AWS CDK, which is actually a more native version. We think that might be a better option for us, but it's very early days. It's still in beta. And your second question was, how much do we save? I really can't answer that question at all, because I don't know off the top of my head what Goldman Sachs' entire budget is for IT, and there are literally thousands of teams. Many of them are still entirely on-prem. Some of them are in the process of migrating, so it's just an impossible question to answer, I'm afraid.
So what you're saying is you have money.
Sorry?
Plenty of it. Sorry, I'm being quite facetious. Okay, another question. Maria, did you have a question?
I was just wondering, because all the technologies you described, they're available across Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud. Why did you pick AWS specifically for this project?
Great question. Two reasons why we picked AWS. One, we knew we needed to build a team very, very quickly, so we thought it was probably wise to go for a cloud vendor that was the most popular in the market and hopefully the easiest to hire for. That's one reason. Second reason is, as I mentioned, we have these two teams that had already successfully created production systems on AWS. As a firm, our maturity on AWS is ahead of our maturity on GCP and Azure, and we thought we could benefit from that, so that's why we went to AWS.
I'm just going to do an online one, and because I'm over here at the back, I am going to try this on my watch, so I apologise.
Good luck.
I wish I hadn't have bought this thing, I've already lost the notification, so I'm just going to use it from my phone. Modern technology. Don't wear a watch that's trying to do things that computers do. Have you considered a fully containerized approach, given that you're already using permanently provisioned resources and are struggling with observability?
Yes, we have. There is a furious debate going on in the team right now as to whether we wouldn't be better off going entirely. There's the entirely Lambda portion of the team, and the other portion of the team that thinks we should just be using containers exclusively. Like I say, we're working really hard to get to our MVP. I think we may discuss some course corrections in the future, so everything's on the table. We haven't decided yet.
There was one over there. I'm going to take my phone with me this time.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, in terms of the move to Birmingham, what was the sort of primary reason for coming to Birmingham over anywhere else, and why from London? So
why Birmingham over anywhere else
in
the UK? It's simply because of the talent we found here. I think, our press release said it all, that, we're here because you're here. We just think there's an amazing pool of talent, some incredible universities producing fantastic IT resources. Places like the School of Code, you don't find those outside of Birmingham. Well, you do now. So yes, it's because of you guys. It's because of the people. That's why we're here.
Cool. I think that we are coming towards the end of time. It's quite nicely just about sort of 4 minutes past 9. So another round of applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And it just remains me to say my big thank yous, obviously, to all of our speakers. So a big round of applause for all of our speakers, please, everyone. Yeah! And a massive thanks, of course, to the, when I say the team, I mean everyone that's not me. So Mike and Hannah and Andy. Hannah's trying to sort of shout something at me and I can't hear it. Oh yeah, and James, I forgot James, so he can, I'll buy you a beer in the pub later. Actually, I can give James a special shout out at this point because he provided all of the equipment that allowed us to do this event hybrid, and this event was hybrid. So we had a whole chat room watching tonight, which is very, very cool, which I didn't actually mention at the beginning. So now you know. So if you want to watch back and see any of the talks, you can, which is quite cool. Of course, my last thanks is, after COVID, it's been a very, very difficult time, so it's been a delight to actually stand up and talk to everyone, and then to watch people do tech talks, and they've been 4 super tech talks. So the last round of applause is to yourselves for buying tickets and coming to see Fusion again. Thank you very much. We normally like to, for anyone that wants to stay out a bit longer, who wants to be a bit naughty, we go to Cozy Club after we are going to Cozy Club. Can I have confirmation, please? Cozy Club? Yep. Cool. If you don't know where Cozy Club is, then stick with the organisers. I think all of us maybe go. No. Okay. Stick with me or Mike or James, us 3 here wearing the Fusion hoodies, and we'll escort you through the joys of Birmingham at night. It's that sounds like it's awful. It's not at all. Just follow us. It's fine. And you can go to Cozy Club, which is a very cool converted bank where I think Lloyd's Bank actually started. So you know.